In 2024, the Indian economy showed strong performance and resilience. India's GDP grew by approximately 7%. This growth rate is impressive, especially considering global economic challenges. India is on track to become the world's third largest economy within the next 5 years and achieve the $5 trillion economy target by 2025.
हमारा वादा है, हम फैसिलिटेट करेंगे। आप वादा करिए, आप इनोवेट करेंगे। हमारा वादा है, हम रिफॉर्म करेंगे। आप वादा करिए, आप परफॉर्म करेंगे।
The Make in India brand continued to boost manufacturing, assisted by the success of the PLI scheme. India becoming the second largest mobile manufacturer in the world and significantly reducing reliance on imports.
Because of your encouragement to the industry and innovation, India has been digitally transformed by perhaps the biggest digital revolution in history. In New India, in Modi ji's India, there's no more business as usual. Rather, there's unusual synergy between government and industry to deliver world-class services to satisfy the needs and expectations of 1.45 billion Indians. As a representative of Young India, I thank you for your incredible connection with the youth and for inspiring us to pursue impossible-looking goals. As we say in Hindi, Modi hai to mumkin hai.
India's merchandise exports reached $468 billion between April to October, reflecting its growing role in global trade. The Finance Ministry has projected that with continued reforms and strong economic growth, India could become the third largest economy in the world within the next 3 years.
The Prime Minister literally labors to know what the views on the ground are. So policies are never made in a hurry. Policies are never made with a confidence that we know it all.
India implemented several significant schemes that other countries are looking to emulate. The production-linked incentive scheme has attracted significant investments in sectors like electronics, pharmaceuticals and automobiles. The Make in India continues to bring in increased foreign direct investment.
It is an aspiration for all Indians to want to see India developed, by a certain milestone and keeping 2047, that is 100 years after we obtained independence from imperial rule.
For the fiscal year 2024-2025, India's capital expenditure outlay was increased by 11.1% to 11,11,111 crore rupees, or about $133 billion. This boost aims to enhance infrastructure development, including the conversion of 40,000 normal rail bogies to Vande Bharat standards. The execution of projects through PM Gati Shakti Yojana integrates 16 ministries and national schemes like Bharatmala, Sagarmala, Udan and various industrial corridors, creating a unified framework for roadways, railways, ports, waterways and airports.
There is absolutely no doubt in anybody's mind that in the last 10 years, our Prime Minister has transformed India, the Indian economy, the Indian political culture, and has brought into politics and into government a sense of service, a sense of determined vision for the future of India in a manner that no other political leader in the history of India has done.
This coordinated approach is expected to result in cumulative spending of $1.45 trillion over the next 5 years. The Gati Shakti National Master Plan has already shown significant progress, with infrastructure investment projected to reach 6.5% of GDP by fiscal year 2029.
मैं देश और देश के बाहर रहने वाले हर भारतीय से कहूंगा, भारत के हर सामर्थ्य से कहूंगा, आइए इस यात्रा में हम सब मिलकर के एक साथ चलें। आइए भारत को विकसित बनाएं, क्योंकि भारत की समृद्धि में ही दुनिया की समृद्धि है।
Clearly, 2025 will be a year in which India's economy will continue to benefit from investments and an environment that promotes entrepreneurship. Javier Milei, who took office in December of 2023, had challenges galore, most of which he addressed resolutely in 2024. Argentina's economy in 2023 was marked by a contraction, high inflation, and a stabilization program. Inflation was as high as 25.5%. Javier Milei implemented several significant economic reforms. He slashed energy and transportation subsidies, laid off tens of thousands of government workers, froze public infrastructure projects, and imposed wage and pension freezes below inflation. His policies have drastically reduced monthly inflation from 25.5% in December 2023 to just 2.7% in October 2024.
In the face of all adversities, let us fight for the ideas of freedom, because if we don't, we will regret it. If it goes wrong, at least we tried. But if it goes well, we will leave a much better world. Thank you very much, and long live freedom, damn it.
By cutting over 30,000 government jobs and reducing government expenditures, Milei freed up resources to stabilize the economy. He also moved to dollarize the economy, replacing the peso with the US dollar to curb hyperinflation.
We are going to make the official exchange rate more honest. The official exchange rate will go to 800 pesos so that the productive sectors have the right incentives to increase their production.
Javier Milei's economic reforms have had a mixed impact. The laying off of government workers led to significant hardships, increased unemployment and poverty. Could they be set off by the significant drop in inflation?
The Argentine experiment, where someone can win an election with a right-wing or adjustment discourse like this one, but not only win the election with the discourse. But I insist, dollarization was not there, but the adjustment was there, and sustaining the political flow behind this adjustment is an interesting experience when seen from the outside. I insist, I do not know to what extent you can change the social structure this way and survive in a democracy.
While the economy is showing some positive signs, the long-term success of Milei's policies remains to be seen. The country has US help, especially after the dollarization of the economy, help that is likely to continue under the Trump administration.
The people of Argentina can count on us as you work to stabilize your economy.
Javier Milei has certainly made bold moves to address Argentina's economic challenges. His decisive actions and willingness to implement tough reforms have shown significant leadership.
Mercosur, which was created to deepen our commercial ties, has become a prison, preventing its member countries from taking full advantage of their comparative advantages or export potential. This problem is not new.
While his policies have sparked controversy and protests, the positive signs in inflation control and economic stabilization are noteworthy. It's clear that he has taken on a difficult task and made significant strides. Despite his tough stance, his popularity for the moment seems intact. The world's largest economies, the US and China, move closer to a tariff war accentuated by the victory of Donald Trump in the US presidential elections. China has taken several steps to boost its economy and prepare for a potential trade war with the incoming Trump administration. Beijing has adopted a moderately loose monetary policy, a stance not seen since the global financial crisis of 2008-2009. This includes measures to expand domestic demand and stabilize property and stock markets. The National People's Congress Standing Committee (NPCSC) unveiled a debt swap program to relieve local governments' immediate debt repayment pressures. The central bank announced its biggest stimulus package since the coronavirus pandemic, aiming to support economic growth and market stability. In the US, President-elect Donald Trump has announced plans to impose significant tariffs on China. He has threatened to implement tariffs as high as 60% on Chinese goods. China was forced to consider various strategies to counter potential US tariffs, including targeting US firms and diversifying trade partnerships with countries like India and Africa. Some eminent economists believe China has an advantage in this potential trade war.
China realizes that it has to be more self-reliant, and therefore you might say there's a race to catch up very quickly. China has some big advantages that it has more engineers. It has a bigger market domestically, and also the chips that you put in manufactured goods that you export around the world.
Tensions have been soaring in the Taiwan Strait as China's largest maritime deployment in decades stirs unease. This too is directed at the United States. These measures reflect China's apparent proactive approach to navigating economic challenges and preparing for potential trade conflicts. The two countries met at summit level in Lima on the sidelines of the APEC summit in November. The outgoing US president making it clear that the two countries don't see eye to eye, but at least don't indulge in double-speak. 2025 will be a year in which America First policy of the President-elect Donald Trump will play out, forcing other countries to follow suit with their own form of protectionism. Trump has emphasized that these measures are part of his strategy to protect American jobs and industries. In 2024, global defense spending saw a significant increase. The Stockholm International Peace Research Institute says total global military expenditure reached $2.443 trillion, marking a 6.8% increase from the previous year. This is the steepest year-on-year rise since 2009. Key factors driving this surge include heightened geopolitical tensions, modernization of defense systems, and increased investments in cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. All this is happening while the UN is urging the world powers to create an atmosphere of peace.
Peace that is more necessary than ever when you see the immense suffering of the people in Gaza, now extended to Lebanon, not forgetting Ukraine, Sudan, Myanmar, and so many others.
The United States remains the largest spender, accounting for over a third of global military spending. Russia's defense spending has surged to record levels in 2024, reaching $125 billion, which is over 6% of its GDP. This increase is largely due to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine.
Russia's economy is on a war footing. In 2025, the total military spending will be 7 to 8% of GDP, if not more. That's a third of Russia's state budget and the highest level since the Cold War. And Russia's defense industry is producing huge numbers of tanks, armored vehicles and ammunition. What Russia lacks in quality, it makes up for in quantity.
Ukraine has significantly increased its defense spending due to the conflict with Russia, dedicating 33.55% of its GDP to defense in 2024. The EU and its member states have provided over 39 billion euros in bilateral financial, humanitarian and military aid to Ukraine since January 24, 2022. In October 2024, the EU and G7 partners agreed to provide loans of $50 billion to support Ukraine's urgent budgetary, military and reconstruction needs. The EU's contribution to this package is $20 billion.
NATO planning process is, those targets, what they call capability targets, now are called capability targets 2044. We need to change 2044 to 2030. Because, we cannot perhaps imagine that we can ask President Putin to delay his plans till we shall be ready. So that's why I'm saying that we need to have some kind of this big bang approach.
The US has been a major supporter of Ukraine, allocating $75.1 billion in bilateral aid, including military, financial and humanitarian assistance. This aid has been crucial in supporting Ukraine's defense and recovery efforts. But despite the support, Ukraine has developed its own indigenous defense capabilities. Israel, the other nation at the center of a military operation, maintains a robust defense budget, allocating 4.51% of its GDP to defense spending in 2024. NATO members have been urged to spend at least 2% of their GDP on defense. However, only 23 out of 32 members are on track to meet this target.
Preparedness for defense costs a lot, but non-preparedness will cost much more.
Drones have become highly advanced and integral to modern warfare, transforming how conflicts are conducted. Drones now integrate AI for autonomous operations, improving target recognition and decision-making. Armed drones can conduct precise strikes on high-value targets, minimizing collateral damage. Towards the end of the year, a series of drones caused confusion in the American skies, but clearly point to the nature of the beast. That is, the military-industrial security intelligence complex.
What I would say about drones is it's fascinating that we are seeing such a proliferation of drones. The technologies of flying unmanned aircraft, of course, are decades old, but the 21st century is when they've really come into their own in many ways. First, with big attacks against Al-Qaeda leaders in parts of South Asia by the United States and other such uses. And then now in the Ukraine war.
The war in Ukraine has highlighted the use of widely available, inexpensive drones. These drones have proven effective in combat, even against formidable militaries. Future drones will have greater autonomy, reducing the need for constant human control. Clearly, the military-industrial complex is not slackening in any way. It is redefining modern warfare, a trend most likely to continue into 2025. The International Monetary Fund said in September this year that the global economy was recovering and would post a growth of above 3% both in 2024 and in 2025. The IMF chief, Kristalina Georgieva, saying that central banks face a difficult balancing act as they start lowering interest rates around the world in the face of falling inflation.
We know central banks face a difficult balancing act. They must ensure that inflation sustainably returns to targets and remains there while avoiding the risk of excessively tight policies. And in fact, while clearly weaker than we would have wanted, economic activity has been remarkably resilient. We are projecting global growth to be more than 3% this year and next year.
IMF continued to run bailout programs to help several economies tied over near economic collapse. The IMF approved a $7 billion bailout under the extended fund facility to stabilize Pakistan's economy and support structural reforms. Pakistan's performance under the standby arrangement has shown progress. Economic activity has stabilized, inflation is declining, and foreign exchange reserves are being rebuilt. However, the IMF noted that the outlook remains challenging and emphasized the importance of consistent policy implementation. Pakistan needs at least 3 years to enact structural reforms.
I do think we will at least be requesting for a three-year program, because that's what we need, as I see it, to help execute the structural reform agenda. But we are creating an entire pipeline, and the thought process is not all of that needs to be done or can be done during the next fiscal year, but over the next sort of couple of years, we want to really accelerate that.
Argentina continues to work with the IMF to manage its debt and economic reforms. Argentina's performance under the extended fund facility has been positive, with decisive implementation of stabilization measures leading to fiscal and external surpluses, improved reserves, and reduced inflation. The IMF highlighted the need for continued efforts to address macroeconomic imbalances and support growth. In Africa, the IMF approved a $3 billion extended credit facility to help stabilize Ghana's economy and support structural reforms. The program has achieved its performance targets. The IMF has expressed satisfaction with Ghana's performance under its extended credit facility program. The IMF Executive Board completed the third review of Ghana's program, noting that the country's performance has been generally satisfactory.
Let me be clear, when I talk about renegotiation, I don't mean we're jettisoning the program. People think that we want to jettison the program. No. We were not at the desk when the IMF program was negotiated. And so we're inheriting a program that we were not a party to. But of course, it was negotiated by the sovereign government of this country. And so we're bound by it. But what we're saying is within the ambit of the program, it should be possible to make some, adjustments to suit what the reality of the situation is.
Key achievements include debt restructuring, recovering growth, and declining inflation. The IMF emphasized the importance of steadfast implementation of policies and reforms to fully restore macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability. As for Sri Lanka, the IMF approved a $2.9 billion bailout under the Extended Fund Facility to address the country's economic crisis. The IMF recently approved the third review of this program and released an additional $333 million to support ongoing economic recovery efforts. The IMF has expressed satisfaction with Sri Lanka's performance under the Extended Fund Facility.
Upon completion of the Executive Board review, Sri Lanka would have access to about $330 million. This would bring IMF financial support disbursed under the arrangement to a total of about $1.3 billion. In terms of the macroeconomic situation, Sri Lanka's ambitious reform agenda supported by the EFF is delivering commendable outcomes. The economy expanded on average by 4% year-on-year in the 4 quarters ending in June of this year, and high-frequency indicators point to continued expansion across all sectors.
Sri Lanka met most quantitative targets and structural benchmarks, although social spending targets were missed. The IMF emphasized the need for continued reform efforts to achieve lasting recovery and debt sustainability. India's emergence as a strong economic engine can help empower economies of the global south.
They want to do more. It's very important for them to try to grow as quickly as they can. That will be wonderful, and it's already been wonderful if you look back at the last 20 years, lifting millions and tens of millions of people out of poverty through the growth process, but they need to do more. That's a topic of active discussion in India.
The IMF sees geopolitical tensions, fragmentation, increased tariffs, potential spikes in commodity prices adding to inflationary pressures going forward, which are likely to dampen global economic activity and growth. Tesla CEO Elon Musk's net worth crossed $400 billion in mid-December 2024. The Forbes' real-time billionaires list showed his wealth boosted by a nearly 71% surge in Tesla shares this year and the soaring valuation of his rocket company SpaceX. Musk is Tesla's largest shareholder with about a 13% stake in the company. The EV maker's shares rose to over $424, extending a rally that kicked off following the November 5 election. SpaceX has reduced the number of shares it bought back from employees in order to bring in some new investors. Tesla investors have pinned their hopes on Musk's relationship with President-elect Donald Trump, hoping the billionaire's role in shaping the upcoming Republican administration's policy agenda would benefit the automaker. Musk also heads brain technology startup Neuralink. Both SpaceX and Neuralink rely heavily on government regulation and policy and could benefit from a business-friendly administration. Musk, who spent over $250 million to help Trump win the election, also owns social media site X and tunnel builder The Boring Company. Musk and former Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy will co-lead a newly created Department of Government Efficiency, an entity Trump indicated will operate outside the confines of government. The acronym of the new department, Doge, also references the name of the cryptocurrency Dogecoin that Musk promotes. Bitcoin surged more than 3% to a record high above $106,000 in early Asian trade in mid-December, extending gains made since the Republican Donald Trump was elected U.S. President in November. Bitcoin rose above the $100,000 mark for the first time on December 5 as the election of the Republican Donald Trump as President of the United States spurred expectations that his administration will create a friendly regulatory environment for cryptocurrencies.
The ground that we've been standing on is moving, and these shifting sands, and in this kind of turmoil, we don't know really what's going to be the winners, what's going to be the losers. And I think that and when you're rejecting it, like many of the elections, especially in the industrialized countries this year, have rejected the incumbents. And so I sort of see Bitcoin as part of this rejection of sort of the established values and not just the values of society, but really of the elites.
Bitcoin has more than doubled in value this year and is up about 45% in the 4 weeks since Trump's sweeping election victory, which also saw a slew of pro-crypto lawmakers being elected to Congress. But it's thought to be an alternative for the store of value and not as a means of exchange.
We're pro-Bitcoin just because I believe it's part of the asset class. In other words, you can't just dismiss it. When you're thinking about stocks, bonds, gold, commodities, you have to look at Bitcoin as a realistic option. Now, clearly, this is going to take time for, I think, many consumers and investors to look at outside of a small population. But $100,000 shows this is just starting in terms of becoming, I think, a real asset globally.
More than 16 years after its creation, Bitcoin appears on the cusp of mainstream acceptance despite naysayers and a history of controversies.
45th President of the United States.